Okay. Hey everybody, welcome to the June 19th edition of the Intuit Developer Friday Morning Hangout. This morning we're going to have Anup and Tony. They're part of the multi-currency team for QuickBooks Online. First, Anup will be talking about multi-currency in general and QuickBooks Online, and Tony's here to kind of handle a little bit more of the API side of the fence. We'll be beginning and handing this off to Anup to demo in about 3 or 4 minutes. Just want to give everybody a chance to join the Hangout this morning. The join link, if you scroll down a little bit, you should see the join link there. The join link is also on the Google spreadsheet that I've shared out repeatedly. You can click the join link there to join. If you just want to experience the YouTube version, you can actually just watch, and then if you have any questions, there is a Q&A panel you can click on. I'll be monitoring that and passing those questions along to Anup and Tony along the way. And as always, these will get recorded and posted up to YouTube afterwards for anybody that needs to watch it in the future. We're still waiting for a couple people to join. I just want to talk about some of the future ones that are coming up and make sure everybody's aware of some of the future ones. So next week, we're going to have the part of the team that does the QuickBooks Online Mac and Windows native apps. And so that's kind of more of that Evernote model I know we've talked about before, where you have QuickBooks Online and it won't matter what screen you have, you're going to get a native experience. So if you're in the browser, you get QuickBooks Online. If you're in the in your iOS device, you're going to have QuickBooks Online natively. Your Android device, you're going to have QuickBooks Online natively. And outside of that, you'll have your also your Windows and your Mac desktop can access QuickBooks Online. So it's really that kind of Evernote model going forward. And so that team's going to be here to talk about that. And I know a lot of developers have asked and wanted to know about that a lot. The following week after that, July 3rd, there will be no Google Hangout. That's the holiday weekend of July 4th. I hope everybody enjoys that time off. I know I'm going to. And then July 10th, Tony will be back. And so Joseph Mao from the API team, and they'll be talking about kind of custom fields in QBO and the APIs around the custom fields in QBO, and then also really kind of understand what your needs as developers are around those custom fields. And then going forward, I will start filling in some of the other Google Hangouts, but definitely you want to be here next week because I think that's something that's kind of new and exciting and pushing really the limits of how people experience QuickBooks Online going forward. With that said, I want to go ahead and introduce Anup. Anup is a product manager for multi-currency for QuickBooks Online. I'm going to go ahead and unmute him and let him jump in and start his presentation. The rest of them I'm just going to put on mute temporarily just during the broadcast, and then at the end I'll open it up for any questions and answers that anybody has. Thank you. And Anup, you are now, actually, I think you have to mute yourself. Sorry, there you go.
I think I just did.
You're all set. Perfect.
Cool, thank you. Hey guys, my name is Anup. Like he said, I work as a product manager at QuickBooks, Intuit QuickBooks. My primary role is to make sure that QuickBooks is compliant globally, and I work on multi-currency and taxes in QuickBooks Online. So today the topic of discussion, like he said, is multi-currency. So I thought I should start off with talking to you guys about why the feature is important, how it's used by small business owners, and how we have rolled it out in past in global regions and now in US. So let me just share my screen. Okay, entire screen. Are you guys able to see the slide? Okay, I'm guessing yes. So basically, the small business owners buy and sell around QuickBooks, buy and sell around the world, right? So they have to whatever they have to purchase, whatever they have to sell, they sell all over the world and purchase all over the world, and everywhere else the currencies are different. So when you sell some goods to, let's say, Europe, you need to send invoices or estimates or quotes or sales receipts in the currency of the customer. When you buy something from somewhere in, let's say, Canada, right? You'll also have to purchase them. You have to send the purchase order in the currency of the customer. So basically, our vision statement for multi-currency is buy and sell around the world easily with multi-currency support in QuickBooks Online, and we basically enable users to send invoices, expenses, bills, checks, every form that you see under the global create icon, deposits, transfers, sales receipt, everything in over 150 currencies. While the important thing is while maintaining the books in the home currency. So let me clarify the two terms I will use here. Foreign currency is anything outside any currency outside of the users, QuickBooks Online users' home currency. And home currency is, let's say a QuickBooks Online user is in the US, their home currency is US dollars, and foreign currency is anything but US dollars. That's Canadian dollars or euros or Indian rupees, or etc. So that's basically what multi-currency is, enabling users to transact in QuickBooks Online in any currencies outside of home currencies also. But like I said, the important thing is maintaining their books in home currency, which is under the hood, every report, like balance sheet, P&L, every other report, ARA, AP, aging report, everything that you see in QuickBooks will be converted back into home currency and maintained in home currency. We have certain multi-currency specific reports that I'll talk through later, but the important thing that I wanted to mention here is everything in QuickBooks Online is maintained in home currency. The primary reason is that it helps the users file whether it is sales tax or income tax in the currency of the country that they are present in. Otherwise, it just doesn't make sense to have two different currencies. If you're seeing below in the slide, these are the components that affect QuickBooks Online, multi-currency in QuickBooks Online. I'll just go through it in maybe in the next couple of minutes and then jump into actually demoing so that you guys can see it. So like as you can see, you can create any customer, any vendor of a different currency. So I can create a customer called Anup and assign that he is supposed to he's supposed to get invoices from me and sales receipts from me only in Indian rupees. I can create transactions, and I'll have a filter that in a transaction that says this transaction needs to happen in a currency, euro currencies. I can make bank deposits. I can deposit into foreign currencies. I can deposit foreign amount in home currencies. I can create chart of accounts, multiple kinds of chart of accounts, except for accounts receivable, accounts payable. Although we do create accounts receivable, accounts payable, chart of account for different currencies by default. But we primarily allow custom users to create bank accounts, credit card accounts, etc. in maintain any currency that they more currencies that we and like you can see when I said that we maintain everything in the home currency, sorry, all the reports in the home currency, you would have guessed that how would we track any exchange rate fluctuations. So we do have an account called exchange gain lost account where all the exchange rates fluctuations are tracked, and we can normalize the whole books based on the exchange rate today, which wasn't like 3 days ago. We provide all of those capabilities. We provide capabilities of editing currencies, and we provide capabilities of adjusting and normalizing for all the exchange rates. Right. So this is on a very high level the summary, I would say, of what home currency, multi-currency is. I'll jump into the demo, but before that, I don't know if you guys had any questions. I'll just pause for like 5 seconds before I jump into the demo.
Yeah, Anup, while you're jumping in, can you talk about so we refresh the rates every 4 hours?
Right. Right.
Is that something people have to pay extra for, QuickBooks Online customers, or is that just a service that they get part of QuickBooks Online? Can you talk about the rate tracking and the rate refresh?
Right. So yeah, I was actually going to do that by showing the demo also.
Oh, okay.
So basically, we have 150 currencies that more than 150 currencies that we provide to the customers, and we have a vendor that will provide us fresh exchange rates every 4 hours that we pull and put it in the system. That is something that's available as an API and obviously of no extra cost.
Got it. So as a small business owner, I don't have to go look these up somewhere else, keep track of these. I'm just getting that for free. And then as a developer, I'm just getting that as for free from
Right,
being on the
right.
platform.
Yeah, we refresh it
Awesome.
every 4 hours also. And you can edit the currency rates to whatever you want also. If you think that you can just fix the currency rate to what you want, but right now the ability to fix the currency rate is only for one day. We are enhancing that to say let's edit the currency. Let's let customers edit the currency rate for a period of time. Right now it's fixed to one day, but otherwise the system generates the currency rate and refreshes it every 4 hours.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Perfect. All right. I'm going to go back on mute and let you continue on here.
Cool. I'll jump into the demo then. Cool. I'm assuming that you guys are able to see the screen. Okay. So the only way to the QuickBooks doesn't come by QuickBooks Online when you register for QuickBooks Online. First of all, multi-currency is a feature that's available only for Plus and Essentials queues. It's not available for Simple Starts queues because we think that this is something that a really complicated business needs. Business that has complicated operations need it. So we only have it for Essentials and Plus queue. And the other thing to note is this doesn't come switched on by default. Multi-currency is not on by default. So you have to go into company settings. You have to go and in the company you have a column here, sorry, row here called currency. So when you click into that, you'll see that multiple warnings we give you and multiple education we give you on turning multi-currency on. We say that multi-currency may be right for you if your financial transaction is in more than one currency. We give them a lot of help articles to decide whether they want multi-currency or not. This is primarily because once you turn multi-currency on, you cannot turn it off. You cannot change your home currency. That is, if my home currency is automatically set to US dollars if I'm from the US, but you do get the ability to change the home currency too. But so we don't let them change the home currency once multi-currency is turned on. You will see extra fields and columns all over the QuickBooks, which is why we make sure that we do we take all the measures to say that you should know what you're getting into right now. Not in a threatening way, but in a more we'll help you figure out whether you want multi-currency or not. So once they give us this acknowledgement and save, that's it. Multi-currency cannot be turned off in QuickBooks Online. So let me do that. And did I say it? Right. So the multi-currency is on now, and then you will get you'll get a page called Currency Center that you can access from here, manage currencies, or I can go in over here and see there is a page called Currencies. So this is the Currency Center, like where you can see that I have automatically QuickBooks has automatically set up two currencies, Canadian dollars and euro, assuming that that's what you'd want. But it'll let you add more currencies through this Add New over here, and pick from the list of 150 plus currencies. So let me add maybe GBP. So it comes in here, right?
And Anup, I would be adding these currencies based on, if I'm a small business owner, these are the 3 or 4 countries I might be doing business with, so I would add those currencies.
Exactly. So if you're doing business with a customer that needs to have a British pound sterling or Canadian dollars or euro, I'll do this. Not necessarily a country. Primarily, I mean, in most of the cases, if you have customers in these countries, you'll need to do it. But there are customers who are just remote, and they probably live in India, but they file taxes in in Britain, so they expect you to send invoices in Britain and stuff like that. So it depends on the customer, but the major use case is that if the customer is in a different country, you add currencies for that customer.
Okay, so I kind of have to know that ahead of time, or add it, like, I'm thinking like maybe I do e-commerce or something, and I'm trying to, I'm taking orders from all over the world, many different regions. I kind of, as those orders come in, I have to go back to this UI and then add those other regions.
Right. Exactly. But so this is not the only way to add the currencies. So so like you said, currencies are primary. You need to know beforehand what the customer or the vendor wants, for sure. That's something that you need to know. But we also give them the ability to not add currencies, not just from the currency centers here, but in any transactions you do. So that's what I was going to go.
So similar behavior to the rest of list items in QuickBooks. You can add it real time as you're doing a transaction.
In real time.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, so so this is a way to add currencies, but like he was saying, every form that you see over here under this will have an aspect of currencies that you can use in it. So so let me talk about all the changes that has happened right now in QuickBooks Online since I've turned multi-currency on. So when you go into, number one is when you go into forms, let's say I create an invoice. And then let's say I create a new customer. I'll say Anup, Britain. So you see there is a drop down for currency here, and you see that the top 3 currencies are the ones that I've added, but you do find the rest of the 150 currencies also here. So if you want to add currencies on the fly, you can still do it. It's just bifurcated by this line where some of them you have specifically explicitly added, some of them you haven't, but you still get the opportunity to add it on the fly. So let me associate Anup with British pound and save. Right. So the important thing to note here is you can associate one customer with just one currency. If you have Anup, accepting or doing business in Britain as well as, let's say, in India, you will need to create 2 different customers. One customer or one vendor can associate only one currency with a customer or a vendor. Right. So let me go to Anup. Let me send an invoice to Anup. Like you can see here that there is a widget that appears over here where you see the conversion rate of GBP with USD, which is a home currency. So in all over the product you will find this widget now where we show the exchange rate of the foreign currency along with the home currency. Right. Let me go and create an invoice for him. And you can see here when I write the rate, you see that this is in GBP. So the whole transaction, basically the transaction currency is now linked to the customer's currency. So whatever I'm writing here is actually displayed and actually considered in GBP, not in USD. So I write 1000 here, right? And then I can send an invoice or whatever I can do. But what you can note here is that we show the value of in GBP as well as in USD here, the converted rate, and so that the customer knows that in his home currency how much it costs, in his customer's currency what does it action if I feel like this currency, right? And what you see here is what is system generated. This exchange rate that you see here is system generated. Like we talked about earlier, we get the currency rates from our vendor, and we refresh it every 4 hours. That's what this reflects. But QuickBooks allows you to kind of edit the exchange rate on the fly, and it will ask you whether you want to edit this exchange rate only for this transaction or for all transactions for today. So any transaction for today will have this exchange rate if you edit it. So let me go ahead and just do only for this transaction. Actually, let me not complicate things right now. I'll because that will lead to exchange rate fluctuation, which I'll talk about later. Let me go ahead and create a new one with the current exchange rate. So let me just add labor, whatever I just did. Let me save and close it. So $1,000 GBPs, 1,587 USD. So save and close it. So I just saved an invoice in QuickBooks Online, right? So now let me show you what all has changed in QuickBooks Online by doing this. Number one is, let me go into customers. You can see that Anup Britton is customer is created, and he's created in GBP currency. And open balance is shown with the GBP symbol here. And when I go into his details, I can see that the invoice shows the balance in GBP, the total in GBP, open, everything. So basically, all of the currencies have been associated appropriately in the customer menu, and you associate the currency with the customer here. Number one. Number two is, let me go into chart of accounts. When I go into chart of accounts, I can see that one extra chart of account is created, accounts receivable in GBP, right? This is what we always create, but we create this as and when any entity of a foreign currency is created, we create an accounts receivable of that foreign currency. So right now we have created accounts receivable of GBP currency. So you see that there is a currency attribute that is also added to a chart of account here. And 1,000 euros is assigned to, sorry, 1,000 GBPs is assigned to this accounts receivable, and it's qualified with the currency here, right? That's number two. You can also see some of the changes in the in the reports, but I'll talk about that later. But let me go into reports now and show you balance sheet. So when I see the balance sheet, in the assets, you see accounts receivable has no entry, but accounts receivable GBP has an entry. But you will notice here that this amount is actually in USD. If you remember, the GBP amount was 1,000 GBPs, but in the report, like I had mentioned earlier, everything is converted back into home currency, which is US dollars. So in the balance sheet, you're always going to see the GBP here, sorry, USD here, which is the home currency. The same goes with the profit and loss. If I see here, total income is always is mentioned in US dollars, which is the home currency, right? Let me know if you had any questions here, because I know this gets more and more complicated as you go on, and if you haven't understood anything in the middle, it's better to clarify.
Okay, let's pause for a second, Anup, and then see open up before. I don't know if Stephanie, Matt, or Jack, or sorry, I missed your name, from Manudine, who that is. I kind of recognize you and kind of don't. I cannot put a name to you. But if any of you have any questions, please definitely unmute and throw it out there. If it's API related, we're definitely going to get into that stuff. But so far, from questions around whatever Anup's covered so far, go and feel free to throw it out there.
Hi, this is Jack from ATEX. Now, we do a lot of e-commerce integrations, and so we have to deal with multi-currencies all the time. Did I understand that that you said that if a foreign currency comes in, that you will automatically do the translation to the base currency?
It depends on what use case you're talking about. So in the reports, we maintain everything in the home currency. If you're downloading stuff from the bank, and if it is in foreign currencies, we appropriately match it with a foreign currency transaction that you have created in QuickBooks Online. But like I said before, everything under the hood, like I showed you in the balance sheet and profit and loss, everything is converted back into home currency and reported.
Okay. Well, what I mean is, just say we are inputting a file, and that file has we want to create invoices, and in that file there's also the currency, U.S. dollars, Canadian dollars, and so forth. So do we just say, okay, now this invoice is going to customer A. He happens to be U.S. dollars, but we'll now have Canadian dollars. Do we have to translate the dollars from one to the other, or will QuickBooks Online do that for us?
So,
That's my question.
right. So the QuickBooks. So basically, a customer can be associated only with a currency. So if in the QuickBooks Online, if that customer is in US dollars, right, any transaction if you're importing any transactions, that customer, we will always assume that whatever transactions he will get is in US dollars. But you can create new customer for Canadian dollars and assume all those transactions to him in Canadian dollars.
Yeah, maybe the question is better asked in the API section. You know what would be very helpful is that we've been working with QuickBooks for a dozen years prior to
right.
QuickBooks Online, so we're very familiar with QuickBooks Desktop. So if there was like a comparison somehow, whether it be in both the screens and the user interface or the API for later, that would be very helpful.
So I let Tony talk to you about the API from the user experience standpoint. For multi-currency, desktop and QBO are no different.
No difference is good.
Yeah.
Now we get asked a lot of questions. Basically a lot of the people that we deal with are not that knowledgeable, maybe as they should. So they're going to say, should I do this? Should I go to multi-currency? And it scares me a little bit that you just have a disclaimer saying, hey, you can't undo it without knowing what really the impact of doing that is on that long-term business. But that scares me a little bit. Just wondering if you thought about another option, say, hey, create a duplicate of your company, try it out. Then if it works on your duplicate company, you can go back and do it to your production company.
Right. Yeah, actually, that was definitely one of our concerns. I didn't actually take you through the help article. That link that was there that I mentioned when you're turning multi-currency on. That help article actually educates a customer a lot about what multi-currency is, whether you need it or that's one of the things. And we are also adding a video there in that help article where we talk you through what are all the impact QuickBooks Online will have once you turn multi-currency on, so that they make an educated guess. Right now, we're just trying to play safe because we have given enough information to you in the help article, and we still would like more confirmation from you because we cannot turn multi-currency off after you've turned it on.
And this is something I think, like, as we move forward more and more to the cloud versus the desktop world, right, is where in the desktop world, a customer or anybody could just click on whatever they want, do whatever you want in QuickBooks, and then, as long as you made a backup, you could restore your backup and put it back to the way it was yesterday. We're just not, the online world is a little bit different with SaaS-based stuff, and it's kind of an interesting where the impact of your decisions are a little bit more permanent in the new SaaS-based world, and it's kind of an industry thing we have to kind of think about, right? Because I'm pretty sure any of you that have SaaS-based apps, if I set a setting, I can't roll my app back either, right? In your app, so it's kind of how industry we need to start thinking about, like how can customers get things back or do an experiment, right? On their without actually messing up their data permanently. It was definitely easier in the desktop days when somebody could just restore their data file. Restore their last week's backup if they wanted, but it's definitely Jack, you do have a valid concern, like what if somebody changes their mind and we kind of sorry it's forever. So it's I think it's a challenge on how we solve that and communicate it for sure going forward.
Well, put it this way, even if let's say they change it to multi-currency, but they say I don't really want it, would it make sense then to say everybody's going to be in the same base currency and then it'll do the same thing as it did before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if I understood your question right, you're saying once you've turned it on, you let people turn it off and do everything in the base currency. Is that what you're recommending?
Yeah, I'm saying, hey, they made a mistake. They don't want the multi-currency, but you can't turn it off. So let's just have everything just be using the base currency.
Right. Yeah, we can think through that use case, but when we do allow people to turn it off, we would like to do it the right way, in the sense that when they turn it off, we actually would like to convert all of the exchange rates back in the most appropriate way to the base currency, and actually report all of the books in with the right conversion, instead of just assuming a base currency, and that effort is huge, which is why we have deprioritized it for now, and playing a little safe by letting people telling people that these are the things that you need to know before you turn multi-currency on.
But Anup, would this be correct? So if I'm a customer, I flip on multi-currency, and then I realize, I don't really want to use it. As long as I only invoice in my base currency, it really doesn't matter. Is that would it be?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay, as long as you only use my base currency.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. The only thing that we are playing safe here is because, like you saw, the widgets and the columns, extra columns and widgets will just appear in QuickBooks Online. If you're okay with that appearing in forms, then it has no effect.
Okay.
Don't have much choice.
Right.
So in theory, multi-currency in theory could just be on by default, and people could just, for every single user, and they would just only use their base currency, and it's really no impact. Now obviously it clutters up the UI because it's that much more extra fields, etc. But like in theory, from an operational standpoint, it shouldn't matter if it's on or off, as long as you only use your base currency. Got it. Cool. I'll let you continue. I don't know what you need to demo some more, Anup, or if we want to jump more into the API, but we'll kind of.
You tell me. I mean, there are more things to demo, but I don't know what makes the best sense for the audience. So I'm okay with whatever you recommend.
Okay. Just to let the audience know, any of you that are experiencing this just as a viewing only, there is a Q&A panel, and you can definitely ask questions there. The question did come in on the Q&A panel. I'm just going to repeat it, Anup. It says,
sure.
How is currency gain and loss calculated in QBO?
Oh, wow, that's like a 10-minute conversation. I can talk through that. That was what I was going to do. Do you want me to talk through that now?
Yes, that'd be great if you could.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be the 10-minute one. It could be the 5-minute one. But yeah, I think a good overview of that would be great. And even if you have to show some screens, that'd be great.
Okay, let me do that. Okay. So there are two kinds of. That was a great question, and probably one of the most complicated to answer. So let me give you like a 1-minute context on that question with the example right here. So this example where you saw, we have a transaction in British pounds, right? 1,000 British pounds, which is converted in US dollars. And the date is 19th, and the due date is July 19th, right? In the course of this time, let's say that the exchange rate between GBP and US dollars changed. So let me force that change by going here and editing the currency. So I can go into British pound sterling and say edit currency here, and let's say I edit the currency to say 3. I double it or something like that. I save it. Right, so basically I'm just emulating a scenario where the exchange rates have changed. Now, how do we now track this, right? I mean, in the books it's recorded as 1,500 US dollars and 1,000 Great British pounds. It has changed. So how do we keep track of it? So there are two things. One we call as unrealized gain. The other we call as the realized gain. right? Unrealized gain is when the exchange rates have changed before you have actually received payment for it. So right now, I haven't received payment for this invoice. So whatever has happened right now is the unrealized gain, right? And if you go into reports, if you see, this is the unrealized gains and losses report. It'll have an entry here saying there was a foreign balance of there is a foreign balance which is a
Anup,
GBP
your
balance of
audio kind
1,000.
Anup, your audio kind of got a
And
little choppy there. If you could kind of rewind yourself about 30 seconds and repeat it, your
the
audio
exchange
kind of clipped out.
okay. Okay, so basically, I just went into the report called Unrealized Gains and Losses, right? And you will see an entry here where the exchange rate had changed, and it will tell you that this is the unrealized gain you have. Um, and like I said, this is how we have tracked, but like I said, this is unrealized because the payment has not yet been received. And this is how we track it, to just answer your question straight away. And there is another kind of gain, exchange rate gain, called a realized gain. That happens when after you have received the payment, the exchange rates have the exchange rates have changed, right? That is the second kind of so let's say that I go into this. Remember that the exchange rate right now, sorry, when the invoice was created was this, and right now you remember that the exchange rate is 3, right? So when I receive payment, knowing that the exchange rate has changed, and I actually receive the payment, if you see here, I'm receiving payment with this, because with 1 GBP equals to $3, because that's the current exchange rate. And I save and close it. Now, whatever you have gained is realized because you have actually received the payment, and this report will show nothing because it's not unrealized anymore. Since you have received the payment after the exchange rate has changed, it's actually a realized gain. And there is another report called realized gain report. Let me just This realized gain report will now have this entry, where we talk about what the gain and losses are. That was like the happy part, the quickest way to explain how we track exchange rates gained or lost. Just to summarize in the next 30 seconds, when you create an invoice and you haven't received payment for it, and the exchange rate has changed, then it's an unrealized gain or loss, which we track in unrealized gain or loss report. Now, second scenario is when the exchange rate has changed and then you receive payment, then that gain or loss will become realized. So those are the two things. Those are the two ways we track it.
Great. That's a great explanation. Ronnie, hopefully that covered your question. At least I had zero understanding of it, but now I do. So hopefully that worked for you also, Ronnie. If not, you can always ask more questions in the questions panel for anybody viewing. And then I'll hand it back over to you, Anup, if there's anything else you think is important to cover.
So, I mean, there was one other thing that I'd like to cover, which is home currency adjustment. But let me know how much time I have, though. How much time do you think I can spend more?
I mean, ultimately, I kind of budget the first hour for guests. Last week, it's really dependent on how engaged the audience is. If people are asking a lot of questions and they really want to know more, we can go up to 2 hours. But on average, it's kind of how you feel. And I don't know how much Tony has formally about the APIs, or maybe the API questions will just be Q&A type sessions. But I don't know, anything else that you feel like a developer needs to know?
Okay.
Specifically, because I think one thing though is this has been in global versions of QBO, correct?
Right.
But now just now it got released into the US version. And so I think like what is the impact? What does that mean? Like what's the impact? Does it even matter? Is it, you know, maybe if you could speak to that a little bit, I think that could help also understanding.
Right.
You know.
So basically, this was available in global versions for the past 3.5 years, and we are literally, I think, day after tomorrow is the full release for this for the US version. From the impact standpoint, I don't see any impact. You know, for the US customers, because this is completely new. From the developer standpoint, I think Tony can speak to it, where we have exposed services that the developers can use to. Tony, did you have anything to add?
So yeah, I think multi-currency has been a feature that has already been on all of our global companies for a while now. So it definitely is not something new in terms of services. But the impact is just that now that it's in US, where the majority of the QuickBooks user base is, there's a higher likelihood that you may be interacting with a company that uses or wants to use multi-currency.
Okay.
That's a really good point in a summary. Like if you're a developer who's kind of been ignoring multi-currency up to this point, now that it's being unleashed to the masses, you may want to brush up on it. That's a really good point. Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. And like you can see here, we can make bank deposits, transfers. You can make transfers from one account to the other. One foreign account to another home currency account. Right now, we do not allow transfers to happen from one foreign currency account to another foreign currency account. That's coming up in the coming releases. We only allow transfers to happen from home currency account to one foreign currency account, not from foreign to foreign right now. One other thing that I will I'd like to briefly touch upon is that in the currency center, you can edit rates, you can delete currency, and there's something called as home currency adjustment, right? Let me create an invoice that's not closed. So let me create an invoice for Great British Pound, and I'll say save and close. So basically, home currency adjustment is a tool when you have to close the books, or when you have to accurately tell the government what the state of the company is. We use this tool, right? So right now in the whole company file, as you know, there is one invoice that is not paid, that is unrealized, right? That's not paid, and it's open. And let's say that the British pound, and it was created with British pound exchange rate is 3, right? Let's say that the exchange rate fluctuation happened now, right? Now exchange rate fluctuation happened today to 4, and I haven't received any payment to it, so it's not in any of my home currency bank account. So basically, I'm holding foreign currencies in QuickBooks Online. I'm holding foreign currencies in a transaction, and it's not converted to home currency bank account. So today, if I have to talk about the state of my company, I will be misrepresenting it, because I have I have a transaction in foreign currency created on a date where the exchange rate was different from today, right? So we give a tool to normalize this called as home currency adjustment tool. So what we do is, for 1 GBP equals to 4 USD, which is whatever I just did, I want to revalue the transactions that are holding foreign currencies, the transactions that are not closed. that is into a home currency bank account. So when I click on revalue, it will show me a transaction that says, hey, there was a transaction which by the way I just created. There is a transaction with the foreign balance of 10,000, which obviously always remains the same. The home currency balance of 30,000, because when I created it, the exchange rate was 3, but the revalued amount is 40,000 because today the exchange rate is 4, right? And the exchange gain or lost is 10,000. And you may probably know that this is unrealized right now because I haven't received payment. But the fact that I have to close my books right now, and I haven't yet received payment, what do? I still have to show how much my company is value, right? So what I do is I revalue this, I get the exchange gain loss, and then I save this. So what happens when, oh, sorry, this is probably a server issue, but let me try it again. Uh-oh, okay. Okay, well, that was the problem with the QA, I guess. I'll wait for it to come back again. But that was pretty much what I was going to say. But let me just go back and so yeah. So what I was going to show you was when I save that, what happens is that transaction is revalued, and a journal entry is created in the back end where the revalued amount is put in the home currency account. That's basically what we do. For all the open holding foreign transactions, we just revalue the amount and show the correct state of the company. That's basically what I wanted to tell you guys.
Got it. Let's go ahead and let Tony jump in with any API related stuff. Just to let everybody know, Tony's actually calling in. He's using his iPhone to dial into this, so he can't flip to his camera. But I don't know if he doesn't have a stand for it. It's a little shaky, so he'll probably just do audio only and not actually use his camera. And he won't be able to share. But what I did do is two important links I put in the showcase. Whoops, sorry. In the showcase, I put two important links. One's a blog post that Tony wrote that just went live, I think yesterday or the day before, that talks about the multi-currency for the US companies. That's on the developer blog. So I did post that. And then I also linked to the actual documentation about multi-currency for developers. So Tony can speak to it, but you may want to go to that blog post or go to that the documentation also for additional details as Tony kind of speaks a little bit to the API. And then after that, we'll just open the floor up to all questions and answers you guys might have about multi-currency. Thanks, Anup. That was a great demo. I've learned so much. I really had I've been a little out of touch of where multi-currency was with QBO, but totally, you guys nailed it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Anup. There are very few people at Intuit who know a lot about multi-currency, and Anup is one of the few. So let me talk a bit about kind of what impact the multi-currency feature has on the API. So as I mentioned before, the services for multi-currency support have already been there for our global companies. But if you had up until now only been working with US companies, you may not have come across these changes. So in my blog post, I've attempted to outline most of the key differences when multi-currency is enabled on a company. And at the very basics, it's basically, as Anup mentioned, when multi-currency is on, you can now have transactions and customers, vendors, accounts that exist for foreign currency. And to kind of convey this in the API response, there is a field called currency ref for transactions, name lists, accounts, etc. And that currency ref is what tells you what currency is this transaction in. And in the past, either this currency ref would always be in your home currency, or you wouldn't even see it if it is just native and multi-currency is not on. So that's one of the differences, is we now have a field that will be returned called currency ref that will tell you what currency this is in. In addition to this currency ref for transactions, there's also another field called exchange rate, which basically this achieves the same job as that widget that Anup showed, on transactions, which basically it tells you what the exchange rate is between this foreign currency and the home currency. And it's basically, if you remember what Anup showed on the QBO UI, it's basically that flag at the very top, the country flag that tells you what currency it's in, and then there's a box where the exchange rate can be filled in. So from a reading of transactions, two things that would be new to a multi-currency company would be they may have transactions in foreign currencies which have this currency ref and an exchange rate associated with those currencies. And as Anup mentioned, the currency ref foreign currencies are supported in all the transactions and contact name lists. One gap on the API side is that in the current release, or the release that will contain multi-currency, V87, which is coming out in the next, I think next week, we do not have multi-currency support for creating deposits and transfers. That's something we're working on, and that will be coming out in the subsequent release, which is V88. Another new aspect from the services perspective is there will be two new endpoints that will basically mimic what that currency center is offering on the UI. So the two endpoints, one will let you query for all of the 150 possible currencies in QBO. It will tell you what the currency ref or code for those currencies are, and it will also tell you which ones are active, where active means it's in use by the customer. Through the API, you can also turn a currency active, in which then it will appear on the small business owner's UI on the top of the list. That's one endpoint, basically telling you what currencies there are, which ones this company is using. The second endpoint is an exchange rate endpoint, which lets you retrieve that exchange rate, leveraging our third-party vendor, to basically retrieve the exchange rate for any of the active currencies on any date. I think it's within the last, Anup, if you're still there, is it 9 months, or how far back do we record currencies for?
2 years.
2 years. Okay. So yeah, for the past 2 years, you can retrieve currency rates for whatever day. And through this exchange rate endpoint, you will also be able to retrieve rates if the small business owner has changed it. So let's say the small business owner decided to change all his rates to, I don't know, 0.5 for the past week. That will be reflected on this endpoint. In the same way, as a developer, you also have the capability of changing the currency rates if you do not want to use the default provided by our third-party vendor. The main use for this currency exchange rate endpoint is so that instead of having to use some external source to fetch the exchange rate for today, if you're trying to create a transaction in a foreign currency, then you can basically use our endpoint to retrieve the exchange rate for whatever day you're trying to use it for, and then use that exchange rate when you're creating the transaction. Of course, if you're, yeah.
Oh, so I was going to say, so essentially, Tony, we've created an exchange rate service.
Yes.
Now. So a developer, it's just you're getting that as a bonus. If you're doing development with QuickBooks Online and the Online API, you no longer, if you have an exchange rate service you're paying for or utilizing your app now, you're getting one for free via QuickBooks Online now.
Yeah. And so there are certain use cases where you may not want to use this. For example, maybe your customer has taken a payment through a particular bank, or maybe using PayPal or some other payment service, and you know what exchange rate was used through that service, then you may want to pass your own exchange rate because you know what exchange rate was used for that transaction. But in most cases, you can basically default to the exchange rate for that day that our third-party vendor is providing.
Awesome. Great. Good to know.
And one other thing is, as Anup mentioned, the multi-currency enablement is done through the company settings page. So on the API, through the preferences endpoint, you will be able to see if multi-currency is on or off. One of the things you cannot do is turn multi-currency on through the API. And that's for the same reason that Anup had mentioned. We want to give this capability or power to the actual small business owner because it is irreversible. So we don't want, at this point, third-party apps to accidentally or for their own purposes turn on multi-currency, because it is irreversible, and if the small business owner did not understand it or did not actually want it, we can't really turn it back off. So this turning on enablement feature is limited to the UI and for the small business owner to do themselves. The two links that David has provided. So one, in the blog post, I basically tried to simplify, just outline the main differences when multi-currency is turned on. The other link is to our actual developer guide, which has been there for a while. It is fairly thorough and goes through all the use cases that involves currency. So I highly recommend reading through that if you have never come across multiple currencies before. We'll also be enhancing and updating that developer guide in the next few releases as we introduce this exchange rate service and deposit and transfers using multi-currencies.
Great.
Yeah, so I guess that's all I really wanted to share, and I think I wanted to leave time for Q&A if there's any questions.
Yeah, so I think I'm just going to throw one out there that came in through the chat that I actually had. Somebody else echoed me on it. Do we have is multi-currency currently supported in the developer sandboxes? So if I have a developer sandbox for US or developer sandbox for UK or India, can I do multi-currency?
I believe I'll need to check with Vishal, but I believe in the global sandboxes, you will be able to access multi-currency, but I don't think that feature has been moved to the US sandboxes yet. But that's something we can check with Vishal.
What I'll do is if anybody, I'll open the floor up to any questions and answers, and while somebody else is asking you a question, I'm going to try and ping Vishal through HipChat and see if I can possibly get an answer to that now.
Yep.
So if you want to, if anybody else wants to go off on mute and definitely ask Tony questions, he's here. Any questions about the API? Those of you viewing, please use the Q&A panel. I will definitely repeat your question and get that out there.
You can also ask anything in general, even if it's not about multi-currency, I guess, while I'm here.
Well, yeah, we could definitely kind of roll a little bit deeper, to just general questions. But I want to definitely get the multi-currency stuff definitely out of the way first. And if there's no questions, we may have hit exactly the perfect hour. So let me just check on Vishal, and I'll open the floor up to any questions. I don't know, if even Anup might have a question of you. I have no idea.
Hi, this is Jack.
Hey.
I know in QuickBooks Desktop, if you're doing like an e-commerce system, and then we do a lot of integrations, if you're dealing with the multi-currency, you may have situations where one time a person might buy something through a US website e-commerce system, another time you might get through a Canada system, and if you want to keep track of the customer, we always putting in the currency code as part of the name to separate them. Are we going to still have to do basically the same thing?
So you're saying you have a customer that may be sometimes using Canadian, sometimes using US, is that correct? Right,
because again, a typical customer of ours might have multiple websites, one for Canada, one for US, one for the UK, and hey, sometimes the one person might decide to come into the UK version instead of the US version, but it's still John Smith. So, in the past we had to say, hey, if you really want to do something like that, let's prefix or suffix the customer name with the currency code, to keep them separate because they're different base currencies?
Yeah, so as Anup mentioned, like well, displaying these three types of customers in actual QBO UI, it is definitely beneficial for you to append the currency code, because then the small business owner or accountant looking at the file can easily see, oh, this is the Canadian one, or this is the US one. That being said, the customer itself will also have a field that basically says what type of currency is this customer using. But that field is inside the customer, so it's not as visible. So I think it is definitely a good practice to append that currency code next to the customer's display name, because it will make it much easier to see. And doing this is again due to how we calculate the accounts. Basically, each customer, as Anup mentioned, can only be associated with one currency, and therefore you need to create multiple customers for this.
Okay, thank you.
It looks like Vishal's not online right now, so I tried to ping him on HipChat, but he's not there, so we might not have an answer to that question until later on. Maybe that's something that, if it is, Tony, maybe you could just, once you get the answer, just put that in the comments of the blog post.
Okay, yeah, that way.
And that way it'll be tied to the rest of it that way. Cool. If nobody else has any questions, I know Dave, you've been on the line pretty quiet from Menudine. I don't know if you have any questions, but if nobody else has any questions, we could probably think about wrapping up the actual broadcast, and then we'll just go to open office hours, kind of the rest of the broadcast. So I'll just give Dave another quick chance, and then I'm going to check the panel questions. Viewer questions. Yep. And so it doesn't look like there's any more questions. I'm going to just flip over here to another screen. Give me 1 second. Just share my desktop. Yeah, so I would definitely like to thank Anup and Tony for coming to the Hangout today. It was great to have them. I've learned a lot about multi-currency. Hopefully you as developers have learned more about multi-currency. Hopefully a lot of you will come again next week. I'm really excited to see about this Windows and Mac app and desktop install of QBO. It's kind of it's pushing that any screen, anytime QBO model really forward. And other than that, I'm going to go ahead and stop. I'm going to stop the screen share or the broadcast now, and just go to open office hours for the rest of you for the next hour. But again, Anup, Tony, you're welcome to stay. You're welcome to leave. But thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.